Hey there, welcome. I know that you are itching to know how I made this flyer. So without much ado, let's jump right into this lesson. So the first thing that I always like to walk you through is how to create the canvas size in case you are a beginner and you're not sure how that is done. So the first thing you do is you go to File, New, and then you want to make sure that your dimensions are in inches, and we are going to do a 10 by 10 canvas. And we want to keep our resolution at 300, and color mode is RGB color, and background we want to choose white, and we are going to click on create. So the first thing that we'll do is to add the color red. So I'm going to click on my foreground color and I'm going to change that to red. And I'm just going to choose the deepest red. I'm going to click OK. And I'm going to pick my paint bucket. I'm going to fill that in. And then we want to add a little bit of a dark gradient on the red. So you want to go to your adjustment layer. You want to click on your gradient and notice that the color here is red because our default for the foreground color is red. So we want to double click on our gradient and double click once on the stop, click on your color, and you can choose whatever color you want. I am going to choose the black. Now, the other thing is, if I click OK, notice that the gradient option I have is from solid to transparent. So just take note of that. I'm going to click OK. And then when we come to the angle, I want to move the angle a little, something like this. So we have the darker area on this side, and we can even increase our spread. And we are going to click OK. Now, the next thing we want to do is to use our brush to create a nice effect for our canvas background or our flyer background. So to do that, we want to go ahead and create a new layer. You want to go to your brush, pick your brush, and I am using this brush, which I will do a tutorial on Friday to show you guys how to download 1,000 free brushes for free. You can install right away. So come back on Friday, watch that video. You don't want to miss it. So you can see that I have tons of brushes and even different options. But for this tutorial, we are using the watercolor, and I have it on Kelly's Real Watercolor Big Rough Water. So I will put a link to that very brush in the description below so you can use it for this tutorial. So I'm just going to go out, and as you can see, I have my brush head at 1200. So you can see my brush head. In some cases, you cannot see your brush head, and the reason being your cap locks is on. So if I click on my cap locks, you realize that my brush goes away. You just see the cursor. If I want to see my brush head, you want to click on the cap locks, and that will activate your brush head. If you want your brush bigger or smaller, you use your left and right brackets. Your left will make it smaller, the right will make it bigger. So with this set, I want to go ahead, change my foreground to white. I'm going to click OK. So we are just going to go ahead and begin to brush. And you see that I'm just doing it gently to create a nice effect. And once you have the detail you want. Now, the very top part, you can just brush those in like so, and just like that. And notice that I have my fill at 5. So I'm going to go to my folder. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight. Now, there are 2 ways to bring in your image. You can either highlight and drag it in like this, double click to bring in all 3, or you can right click on each and open with Photoshop. So these are the 2 ways you can easily bring in your subject. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out the subject. So we are going to pick our quick select tool. We're going to work on all 3 subject. And with my layer selected, I'm going to click on select subject. Now for this one, we can use our subtract from selection. If I zoom in, and I can get rid of this like that. Now the rest of the hair, if we want to fix it, all we need to do is to click on select and max. And I already have a tutorial that I show how to select your hair and cut out your background. So you can look at my previous video, and I'll also put a link in the description. So you want to make sure that on your property, you choose overlay. You want to make sure you're on overlay, and then your radius, you take it to 8 pixels. Then you pick your edge refining brush, and then you just brush gradually over these areas to reveal the hair that you can see. And then the next thing we want to do is go down to your property, check decontaminate color. You realize that the hair becomes fuller, the gray goes away. And now what we want to do is make sure that your output says new layer with layer max. Click OK. And we are going to zoom out. So we have this set. We are going to use our move tool, and we are going to move our subject out of the way. We're going to do the same for this one, but this subject is a little bit tilted. So we are going to rotate him like that so that he is standing straight. I'm going to double click. If you don't know how to use your transform, or if you have an older version, if you click on your subject, you will have to go to edit, transform, and rotate, and it allows you to do the same thing. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in with our quick select tool. We're going to select subject, and with this, we don't have to cut out the hair or anything. It's perfectly selected, unless you are picky and you want to go ahead and do some more cleaning. But I think for this tutorial, we're good with what we have, okay? So you want to go down to your layers panel, and then you want to click on layer max, and that will cut out the subject for you. So we're going to use our move tool, and we are going to move this also out of the way. Now we want to make sure that we are going to cut out this subject. We want to scale him down a little, like so. I'm going to go ahead and even scale this guy down a little. So for the third person, you click on the image, you click on quick select tool, you click on select subject. Now Photoshop cuts it out for you just like it did for the other 2. We are going to click on layer max. It cuts out the background. But notice that when you zoom in, this area wasn't well cut out. So for us to clean this up, this is very easy. You want to make sure you're on the layer max, and you want to make sure that your foreground is black. Now when you're using layer max, foreground, the black color hides, white reveals. So we want to pick our brush to clean this off. But since we can't really see the shirt where it ends, we are just going to use our lasso tool, and we want to go ahead and just eyeball and trace where we think the shirt basically ends. And I'm just going to do a circle around the area we want to get rid of. I'm going to go ahead and paint this area. But before I do that, notice that my foreground, my flow is at 5%. I have to take it to 100%. Now, when I erase, everything goes away. Command D to deselect. I'm going to zoom out. So we have all three of our subjects all cut out. Now, the next thing we want to do is to put our subject in a circle which has a red background. How do we do that? Very simple. So we want to go ahead, first of all, rescale all three. I'm going to scale this down a little. And this guy seems like he's good in terms of size. And for her, we are going to scale her down and set her here just like that, a little bit bigger. So we have all three. Now we're going to pick our Eclipse tool, or you can also pick your shape Eclipse, whichever one, doesn't matter. I'm going to go ahead with the Eclipse marquee. I'm going to make a round circle. You're just eyeballing around the subject, and we want to create a new layer. So I want to make sure I create a layer right beneath the subject that I am working on. So I'm going to click on that subject. I'm going to click on that subject layer, and I'm going to click on my plus icon. It will give me a new layer. You want to make sure you pull that layer beneath. So you want to lift your subject layer above the other one. And what we are going to do, if you want to know how I did that, you just have to use your mouse, put it in between the line, and it will activate the up and down arrow. So now that we have the layer behind our subject, we can change our foreground color by just clicking on, any red that we want in this background. And we're going to click OK to accept, pick our paint bucket and fill that in. Now, the other thing is, what do we do with the bottom portion of the subject? Well, it's very easy. With your marquee Eclipse still activated, you want to click on select and you want to inverse. So with the inverse means that everything outside the circle has been selected. So I will go back to my subject layer, and then with my eraser tool, it will ask you if you want to turn the subject into a smart object. You want to click OK. With your eraser, you can go ahead and erase everything else around the subject. I'm going to make another copy of my Eclipse since I have it now. So to make a copy, Command J, make a copy. I'm going to move that below the subject like so. And what I'm going to do is that I want to move this Eclipse right beneath that subject. And I'm going to hold down my Alt, hold down my Command, and select my Eclipse by hovering. So if you press Command, you realize that as you put your mouse around the Eclipse layer, it gives you this arm with a square, which allows you to click. So you make a selection of your Eclipse. So with this selection, we want to click on our subject layer. Our subject has been selected. So we want to do the inverse so that we can cut out our subject. So you go to select, inverse, you pick your eraser tool. You want to click OK to turn your subject layer into a smart object. Now you can just quickly erase, Command D to deselect. Now we have the last person. So before we do the last person, I want to show you something. We want to merge our subject and our background. So you want to click on your subject layer, hold down your shift, select your other layer, right click, and merge layers. So now this is one entire, now this is one image. Now, if you don't want to do that and you feel you might want to go back and use this, what you can do is that you want to select both layers and you want to right click, and what you want to say is link layers. Now, if you link layers, you can move it together, but if you unlink by right clicking and unlink, now you can move them individually, separate. So this is two ways of either locking two different layers or merging it all together. I'm going to go ahead and merge it because I'm satisfied with how it looks. So I'm going to shift both for now, and oops, I need to go back because I need to make a copy of my Eclipse. So I'm going to press Command J. Now that I have a copy, I'm going to move that to the other subject, and I'm going to make sure that I select the two lower ones, merge, so that I have both layers. Now, the reason why this looks like is covering the other one is because I haven't moved it. Oops. So there you go. So I'm going to move this out of the way, move the other one out of the way, and we are going to cut out our subject. Now, sometimes you want your subject maybe protruding out of your Eclipse. So let's say you do something like this, Command to select your Eclipse, and if we go to select and we do the inverse, what we can do is that we can erase by selecting our subject layer. We can erase just the bottom portion, Command D. So it acts as though our subject this time is coming out of the Eclipse. So it's like it creates a 3D effect. And that is a cool trick that you can do. And I'm doing this because somebody actually asked me, one of y'all asked me. So I wanted to just add this little trick in this flyer. So I'm going to select both layers, right click, and we are going to merge. So we have these three. I'm going to set them next to each other, just like that. And you notice that as I move my Eclipse, a guideline is activated. So it helps me to align all of my Eclipse. If yours doesn't show up, you need to go to View, and then you want to click on Snap. And when you click on Snap, it will give you all the guides and you can do all of that. So I want to rescale all of these three Eclipse. Instead of rescaling one at a time, I'm going to delete this image. I don't need it anymore. So I'm going to select all three by holding down my shift, and I'll scale all together so that they are all proportional. So now that I have them all scaled, I'm going to move them in the middle like so. And I'm going to move this out just a little and this just a little. So we are good. Now, all we need to do is add some text. So I'm going to pick my text tool and I'm going to type in the word the. I'm going to highlight. I want to make that black, and I'm going to change the font. And notice that I use Geometry 415, and I will provide that for you. I'm going to rescale it just a little like that. Then I'm going to pick my text tool again, and I'm going to type in and counter. I'm going to highlight. I'm going to change the font color to Scriptina, Now, scripting I've used a lot, so I will also put a link to that for y'all to use. I'm going to highlight and I will just flip my foreground and background color with my arrow. So I'm going to go ahead and rescale this, and I'm going to set it right here. I'm going to scale it a little bit more and set it like so. I want it in between the two. So it's something like this. And you just want to be creative. So however creative you want to take this, that's up to you. Now, I want my encounter to be above my text. So I'm going to move this all the way up. So you see the red on top of the black. And I'm going to pick my text tool again. And I'm going to go ahead and type in conference 2020. I'm going to highlight, change that to black, and we're going to change that to Arial. I'm going to change from Arial, the style, I'm going to make it bold. With my move tool, I'm going to rescale, and I'm going to just move that and set it right there. So we have something like this. Now I want to make sure that the T goes beyond my canvas. So we have something like this. And I'm going to select bold text. I'm going to put that below my, so that the subject is in front of the text and not behind it. So we have something like this. This looks very cool. We want to go ahead and type in the name of the church. So with my text tool selected, I'm going to choose Arial. We're going to just type. And I'm going to set it in the middle, something like this. You can even say the Mountaintop Church presents the Encounter Conference 2020, but I'm not going to add that to it. Sometimes you want to keep your flyers very simple. You know, sometimes less is more. When you crowd your flyer, you get your audience confused and they don't know what you are trying to convey. So always keep that in mind. So the next thing we're going to do is to add the names of each of these artists. So we are going to click on the text that we just created, the Mountaintop Church. I'm going to hold down Command J to make a copy. I'm going to drag that here. So we are halfway, almost done. I'm going to zoom in a little. So, oh, and if you're having problems zooming in and out, you can go to your magnifying glass and then click on Fit Screen. So the next thing we want to do is to add a little bit more info on the bottom. So I'm going to pick my text tool. This time I want to change my font to BBuzz. You know I use BBuzz font a lot. I'm going to click and add the date. And I'm going to highlight. We're going to change that color to white. With my move tool, I'm going to just scale it like that. So we have our dates a little bit bold and big. Sometimes you just want to do that. So I'm going to go ahead, highlight, and I want to take down the style. I want to make it book style. And we want to space this out a little. My critic, who is my daughter, who normally looks at my work, said that they are too close together. So from afar, they all look the same. So I want to space it out a little. So I'm going to go to properties and I'm going to go ahead and open it up just a little. I know you're shocked. You're like, your daughter critiques your work? Yeah. It's always good to have a second eye because sometimes you do something and you think is good until somebody who is not working on it looks at it and they are able to point out things that you missed, which you never really picked up. So it's always important to have a second eye on anything you design, even if the person is not an expert. They might pick up on an error or a typo that you did not see. So let's continue. That's just a little tip. So I'm going to recenter this. Now we're going to go ahead and add the venue. So I'm going to click on my text tool with my BBAS font activated. I'm going to click and just add the venue. And I'm just going to go ahead and move it up a little. Now we want to close up the spacing of this. So we go to our property bar and I'm just going to move my VA in a little so it's more compact. And I think it's good. It's all centered. We are going to go ahead and move this up a little. And basically, guys, we are done. It's that simple. Yeah, very simple. Now, the other thing that you can do, you can add a second color to your background. So let me show you what I mean by that. So we're going to select our background, add a new layer. We're going to go back to pick our brush. We already have our brush selected. We want to change the foreground color. We're going to go with almost like a cyan. I like that color. So we're going to click OK. With our paint bucket, notice that you can see my brush head because my cap locks is on. I just turned it off. So we want to add a little bit more color. So I'm going to do something. Oops, it's too much. And do you know why it's too much? It's because look up here. The flow is at 100%. We want to first of all press Command D to deselect or go back. To go back. And with our brush, we want to change our flow. We had it at 5%. So we want to keep it at 5%. Or you can just type that in, enter. And then with our brush, the same brush size, we want to gradually create this cool effect on the white area that we've already done. So you have something like this. You don't want to do it too much. You can just do it just a little, just to add a little bit more of an effect to your finished work. Some people might want to keep it. Some people might want to keep it all red, white, and black, but you can add a bit more of a splash by introducing a fourth color. So guys, this brings us to the end of the tutorial. I hope this was very helpful to you. I know I've introduced a few new elements. I always like to do that so that you keep learning new tricks on how to improve your flyer. So please go ahead, try this. If you want me to see it, you can share it on your social media and just tag me. So this brings us to the end of this lesson. As always, thanks for watching and don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, even share. And if you're new, please don't forget to subscribe and also turn on the notification bell for all future uploads. So Friday, please, I have a special gift for you all. So don't miss out on that video. See you then. Bye.